Have you ever wondered how one single day can change the course of an entire nation? Well, on October 14th, 1066, that's exactly what happened. This wasn't just any battle. It was the Battle of Hastings, a clash that would shatter the Anglo-Saxon world and forge a new England from its ashes. So grab a seat, because today we're diving deep into why this one event was so utterly decisive. Our story begins at the start of 1066, a year of chaos for England. King Edward the Confessor dies without a clear heir. This creates a massive power vacuum, and three powerful men believe the throne is rightfully theirs. First, there's Harold Godwinson, the most powerful earl in England, chosen by the English council, the Witenagemot, to be king. He was crowned almost immediately after Edward's death. But across the English Channel, William, the Duke of Normandy, claimed that King Edward had promised him the throne years ago. And to the north, there was Harald Hardrada, the fearsome king of Norway, a Viking warrior who believed he had a claim through an old royal agreement. Three claimants, one crown. You can already see this isn't going to end well. King Harold Godwinson knew he was in a tight spot. He had enemies on two fronts. He spent the entire summer with his army, the Fyrd camped on the south coast, waiting for William's invasion fleet. But the winds weren't in William's favor. Weeks turned into months, and nothing happened. Harold's army was made up of farmers and landowners who needed to get back to their fields for the harvest. Supplies were running low, so in early September, Harold made a fateful decision. He disbanded his army and headed back to London. Wouldn't you know it, just days later, disaster struck, but not from the south. Harald Hardrada, the Viking king, landed in the north of England with a massive army. He even teamed up with Harold Godwinson's own exiled brother, Tostig. They smashed through the northern English defenses at the Battle of Fulford. When Harold heard the news in London, he had to act fast. In a move that still astounds historians, he regathered his elite troops, the Housecarls, and marched them nearly 200 miles north in just 4 days. It was an incredible feat of speed and endurance. On September 25th, Harold launched a surprise attack on the unprepared Viking army at a place called Stamford Bridge. The battle was brutal and bloody. Harold Hardrada and Tostig were both killed, and the Viking invasion was completely crushed. It was a stunning victory for Harold Godwinson, one that should have secured his kingdom. But fate had a cruel twist in store. While Harold was celebrating his triumph in the north, the winds in the English Channel finally changed. Just 3 days after Stamford Bridge, William of Normandy's fleet set sail. William and his army of Norman knights landed at Pevensey Bay on the south coast of England on September 28th. There was no one there to stop them. Harold, still in the north, got the terrible news. He now had to do the impossible: march his exhausted, battered army all the way back down the length of England to face a fresh, well-rested, and heavily armored Norman force. Can you imagine the pressure? He had just won a kingdom-saving battle, and now he had to do it all over again, against even greater odds. Harold rushed his men south, gathering what new recruits he could along the way. He reached London around October 6th and stayed for about a week to let his troops recover slightly. Some advisors told him to wait, to gather more men from across the shires. But William's army was pillaging the countryside, Harold's own personal lands, trying to force a confrontation. Harold, being a proud and proactive king, decided he couldn't wait. He marched his army south to meet William Hedden. On the evening of October 13th, his army took up a strong defensive position on top of a ridge, then known as Senlac Hill, near the town of Hastings. The next morning, October 14th, the battle began. The English under Harold had a significant advantage. They formed a massive shield wall on the high ground. This was a classic Anglo-Saxon tactic, a wall of interlocking shields bristling with spears. For the Norman knights on horseback, charging uphill into this wall was like running into a fortress of wood and steel. All day, the battle raged. William's army, a mix of archers, infantry, and his elite knights, threw themselves against the English line again and again. But the shield wall held firm. The Anglo-Saxons were incredibly disciplined, shouting their war cries and repelling charge after charge. At several points, it looked like the Normans might actually lose. Rumors even spread through William's army that he had been killed, causing panic in the ranks. William had to ride among his troops, lifting his helmet to show he was still alive, and rally them. To break the deadlock, the Normans used a clever but risky tactic: the feigned retreat. Some of their knights would pretend to flee, tempting the less disciplined English troops to break from the shield wall and chase them down the hill. A few times, it worked. Small groups of English soldiers would rush out, only to be surrounded and cut down by the Norman cavalry. The shield wall began to weaken. As the day wore on, both sides were exhausted. But the turning point came late in the afternoon. Exactly King Harold died is still debated, but the most famous account, from the Bayeux Tapestry, shows a figure with an arrow in his eye. Whether it was an arrow or being cut down by Norman knights who broke through the line, his death was the final blow. With their king gone, the morale of the English army shattered. The shield wall broke completely. His loyal housecarls fought to the death around his body, but the rest of the army, the Fyrd, fled into the twilight. William of Normandy had won. Why was this single battle so decisive? Why didn't the English just find a new leader and keep fighting? Well, the first reason is that the English leadership was completely wiped out. At Hastings, not only did King Harold die, but so did his two brothers, Gyrth and Leofwine. The entire House of Godwin, the most powerful family in Anglo-Saxon England, was gone in a single day. There was no obvious, charismatic leader left to rally the resistance. The Anglo-Saxon ruling class was decapitated. Secondly, Harold had already defeated England's other major threat. His victory at Stamford Bridge, while heroic, meant there was no one else who could realistically challenge William. The Viking threat was eliminated. William was the last man standing. He had a clear path to the throne. After Hastings, he marched towards London. Although there was some initial resistance, the remaining English nobles and bishops, leaderless and demoralized, eventually submitted to him. On Christmas Day, 1066, William the Conqueror was crowned King of England in Westminster Abbey, the very same place Harold had been crowned less than a year before. The consequences of this one battle were immense. It wasn't just a change of king. It was a complete replacement of the ruling class. William seized all the land from the Anglo-Saxon nobles and gave it to his loyal Norman barons. This introduced the feudal system to England on a massive scale. French became the language of the court, of law, and of power for the next 300 years. The English language itself was forever changed, absorbing thousands of French words. The entire culture, architecture, and social structure of England were transformed. Castles, a Norman specialty, sprung up all over the country to control the conquered population. The old Anglo-Saxon era, which had lasted for over 600 years, was over. So when we look back at the Battle of Hastings, we see more than just a clash of armies. We see the dramatic end of one world and the violent birth of another. A combination of bad luck, exhausting marches, and the loss of its entire leadership at a single critical moment meant that for Anglo-Saxon England, there was no coming back from this defeat. The fate of the nation was truly decided on that bloody ridge on a single autumn day. It's a powerful reminder of how history can turn on a knife's edge. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this journey back to 1066 interesting, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into history's most pivotal moments. Let me know in the comments what other battles you'd like to see covered. See you next time.